Welcome, everyone, to the newest edition of Hammer Time. This is Webb, your host on the USFL Network. Maulers lost week 1, 22-15. We'll get into that. We'll review that, and we'll also preview the Jersey week. It's coming, Hubmate week for the Maulers. So, like I said, we lost 22-15 on week 1. It was a disappointing loss. The offense really didn't produce a ton. The defense was pretty good for most of the game, and the special teams were up and down. Some of the biggest moments were made by the special team, but some of the biggest downfalls were also made by the special teams. It was 9-9 at halftime, even with a missed field goal and going for 2 instead of trusting the kicker, it seemed like, or they were just being super aggressive. 9-9 at halftime. Breakers come out, they kind of control tempo for the entire second half. Still, it was 15-15. The defense was doing solid, holding them to field goals, even though they're getting a bunch of yards. Henne ties up the game in the fourth quarter with his punt return. The preceding kickoff goes out of bounds. They get the ball to 50. They're able to drive with under 2 minutes to go. Very difficult loss, but these aren't the 2022 Maulers, and you can tell that from watching Sunday's game. So the 3 things you need to know when it comes to the game are these 3 kind of stats. Time of possession, the Breakers had the ball for 37 minutes and 18 seconds, while the Maulers had it for 22 minutes and 42 seconds. Anytime you give a team 15 extra minutes, you're going to have a tough time winning. Most of the time, the team with the possession tends to end up winning, especially if there aren't a lot of turnovers, which they weren't in this game. Total plays, that kind of goes to the time of possession. The defense was on the field for 68 plays, while the offense was only on the field for 47. The defense gave up some yards, but the offense didn't produce at the same time. And the passing game was anemic. 72 yards. They were 10 of 27 between the 2 quarterbacks. As you can see, the yards per attempt were completely down. When you're only getting 3 yards, you're not even getting 3 yards. So even if you passed every down by average, you're still looking at a 4th and 1. That is not how you're going to be successful in any league, especially professionally, at the USFL level. So those were the 3 biggest things that really stood out for me, and we'll dig it a little deeper. First, the Hammer Time player of the game was Reuben Foster. The guy was all over the field. He caused the fumble for the first touchdown that Tizzino picked up. He was the first one to hold on to that turnover hammer. 12 tackles, 9 solo. He was just a beast, and their running game was anemic, just like our passing game, because of guys like Reuben Foster. If Anthony Jones did get by the defensive line, which was solid, Olive, Boogie, Beckner, Vaughn Taylor, like they were solid. Nasir Player, like they were getting to MBT, especially the first half, the entire time. They were hitting them. Boogie had a sack. Beckner had a half a sack. Vaughn Taylor had a half a sack. And Olive had 2 sacks. If the defensive line continues to put pressure on the opposing quarterbacks and make them feel uncomfortable, this defense is going to be pretty good. The corners are solid. The safeties obviously were all USFL. And then you not add Eli Walker, but Eli Walker seemed to come on and growing in his role. You haven't even gotten Tyson Graham back yet. Xavier Lewis is there. It just seems like the defense is set pretty good. And I look forward to seeing them as they take on a new challenge this week, a completely different type of team, a team that they're familiar with. So it should help out. But like I said last week, if there was a time to get the Breakers, especially on offense, facing them, it was this week. So now I'm going to do the Flames. 10 Flames means that part of the game was on fire. The least amount of Flames, obviously less on fire. Passing offense was 2 out of 10. It seemed like right before the half, and even when they ran out of time in the fourth quarter, it seemed like when Troy Williams was in there and it was a little bit quicker, it seemed like there was a little bit of a flow to it. There was no rhythm. And there was a rhythm with Troy Williams, just a little bit. And if they continue to build on that, I think the passing offense will get better. Everyone has to remember that all these quarterbacks are brand new. So they've only had 3 weeks of camp with the Maulers and Tomlinson's offense. Yes, they have some weapons at their disposal. They're younger quarterbacks. They're not MBT. MBT is a professional. He just got done winning a Grey Cup in Canada. Troy Williams hasn't played much in the last couple of years. James Morgan has been on teams but hasn't played a ton. The game speed, everything, it just seemed like they were a little overwhelmed for the moment. And I think they're going to grow into their role. The rushing offense was 4 out of 10. Dwayne Gary had that 130-yard rush. The rushing offense did all right. I would like to see us to balance a little bit more since the passing game wasn't in any kind of gear, to use that rushing offense a little bit more, especially because you got guys like Garrett Groshek and Dwayne Gary and Madre London running the ball. I think that rushing offense can, pick up a little pace. I'm not saying focus on the rushing. I'm just saying just trust it a little bit more. Defense overall, I gave it 7 out of 10. They did seem to wear down. Like I said, the time possession was a big part of that. The corners were solid. Yes, they gave up 300 yards passing or 270 if you take off the sacks. But they were on the field a lot, and then when it got to the end zone, it was holding them to a field goal, holding them to a field goal, holding them to a field goal. And that's key. That can win you a lot of games. And with an offense performance like that the Maulers just had, that defense holding them to field goals kept them in the game. To go to the special teams, they also got 7 out of 10 because guys like Isaiah Henney's punt return was electric. That moment was on fire. I wish there were more people in the stands because that was an electric moment. A team that was down and seemed like they were just not doing anything got a real pick-me-up. The only problem with that is the defense had to come back on the field. It's the same thing with their defensive touchdown in the first half. Yeah, it's great they scored, but the defense has to come back on the field. There's not a huge roster here. So for them to be on the field 15 minutes longer, it does take a wear on the body. I don't care if it's week 1, week 2, week 3, but you've got 300-pound guys that are just pass rushing, especially against a team like this that just love to throw the ball. I got a quote from Boogie. Boogie's one of the greatest. If you follow him on all of his social media, he said, "There's no time to hang our heads or feel sorry for ourselves. We have to watch the film, learn from it, and then get back to work and do everything we can to put one in the win column next week." That's what your leader's supposed to say, right? It was 15-15. It was a tough one. Boogie had a great game. They could have pointed fingers. Reuben Foster was really good. Gilbert was pretty solid on the corner. Gibson, you didn't hear his name, but he was out there. Same thing with Tarpon Tornadin, and Dale Warren had a couple tackles, and Malcolm Howard was out there. And the defensive line, Nasir Player, didn't get a lot of tackles, but guess what? He was out there. Vaughn Taylor had that half a sack. The whole defense was pretty solid, but they didn't point fingers. This is a team game, and this team is really tight. And there were some quotes out there in the USFL of other teams kind of throwing shade at each other, other people in their locker room. You didn't hear anything like that for the Maulers. So I'm really excited to see this team continue to grow as we head into week 2. Talking about week 2, 1 p.m. Sunday on NBC, national game. Playing the Generals, the hub mate, the team that you saw twice in scrimmages. The biggest thing is they're familiar with them. They saw the Generals a bunch. They're spending time. They're sharing. They're taking airplane rides with them. They're eating lunch with them, eating dinner with them, or during camp they were sharing facilities. This is a team that they're very familiar with. The second point for this week is to move on. Last week was a tough one. You can't, just like Boogie said, you can't hang your head. You just got focused, get better, and hopefully this week, week 2 will bring a W in the column. Who to prep for? 2 guys on the previous slide. It was Dakota Prukop. Prukop came in for DeAndre Johnson, who was not hitting a pass, but was using his legs effectively. Prukop came in and settled the offense a little bit. I know they only scored 10 points, but Prukop did all right. And I look for his role to expand as he gets familiar with Mike Riley's playbook. But the two guys I would look out for, I'm going to start with the defense because I love defense, and we're black and gold, so you always start with defense. Chris Orr, the linebacker, he lives in the backfield. As you can see, he got 2 tackles for a loss on a team that's running a lot. 9 tackles. He was all over the field. He was hitting. Chris Orr was nominated last year for Player of the Week, I believe, against the Maulers. He's capable of a big game, and he's someone to watch out for. Everyone will focus on the Toby Johnson and the Luanis and so forth. But Chris Orr is one of those guys that, if you're not paying attention, he's going to take your head off, and he can cause a turnover, and he's going to get you. He's number 2 on the defense. And, of course, thick thighs save lives. Everybody's favorite. If you're a fan of the USFL, you know Darius Victor. Vito had 8 carries, 89 yards. He didn't have his running back mate back there with Trey Williams from last year. Not 100% sure what happened there. But the offense still goes through Vito. Vito is so shifty. Seeing him in person, you don't realize how shifty he is and how quick he moves those thighs from the left to the right. And I really look forward to seeing that challenge of the defensive line and the linebackers being able to contain this running game because the Generals are pretty good. I know they lost 27-10 to the Stallions. Stallions are the defending champs. Stallions were playing at home. Stallions were ready to go. Generals seemed to kind of miss Luis Perez just a little bit, just because of familiarity. Remember last year they lost their first game to the Stallions. It was a much closer game. But they then rattled off 9 straight wins all the way to the playoffs. This is a good team. This is a very well-coached team. Steve Smith, Mike Riley, it's Ted Cottrell. Like it is so veteran-focused team where they're going to be coached well and they're going to be ready to go. And it's a professional organization over there. Bill Devane, the GM, finds guys from all different types of levels. As you can see, Vito is Towson. So this is definitely a challenge for the Maulers. We going into it, everyone knew that the Maulers had a difficult schedule from the jump, where you're going to the Stars, you're going to this Stallion, or you're playing the Stallions, you're playing the Breakers, you're playing the Generals, all in the first 4 weeks. The goal is really, obviously, it would be nice if the Maulers were 4-0 after 4 weeks, but it would really be nice if they get a couple wins in these next 3 games. Get a little bit momentum going into the Michigan games and the Houston games and the Memphis games that, if you look at power rankings across, they're pretty close to. But all the tough games are up here at the top. So really look forward to seeing this game. The Hammer Finder of the week. Last week, I kind of struck out. Vaughn Taylor did get a half sack. But this week, I want to see Terry Beckner. If you remember the Stallions game last year, Beckner caused a lot of pandemonium in the backfield, hitting Bo, hitting J. Mar. He had his best game with the Maulers probably until last week. Last week, he was solid as on the defensive line. I look for him to grow more with this team and definitely expect a decent game here. And to be able to control the line of scrimmage, to control Vito Victor, and don't let him get away. Dwayne Gary, he was the only running back where I felt like something was about to pop off. Madre didn't look 100%. Garrett Grushek struggled in the short yard. Yes, he did have a 10-yard pickup. They got to get the running game going. I'm not saying Madre's hurt or anything like that. I'm just saying it just didn't look like what it did last year, even last year. Dwayne Gary popped that 30-yard run. Really excited to see him continue to grow. Hopefully they can find something underneath, and that's the reason why I put him under here. If the quarterback can't find the deep route with the Walkers and the Bailey Gaithers, dump it off to Dwayne Gary. Let him go for 10, 15 yards. That's got to be something that this team gets better at, is taking those short little dump passes and moving the chain to 8 yards. Artavius Lynn had 4 catches. I think he had 14 yards. Like that's just not the kind of dump off plays that you really want to be running. If you're going to dump it off, you need to get some yards out of it. Matty Siebert and that's the exact same reason. Matty Siebert, if you look at his stats historically in his career, a lot of first downs and a lot of touchdowns for him. He doesn't get a ton of catches, but every catch that he does get is a big play. He did it last year before he was hurt. I would like to see Matty Siebert become a little bit more involved in his passing offense. And just like I just said about Dwayne Gary, be the safety valve for either Troy Williams or James Morgan. It looks like they're going to mix them up a little bit. Troy's going to be a little bit more hurry up. James Morgan's going to be a little bit traditional, give 2 different looks. I would like them to settle on someone down the road. Morgan he was the guy that was mostly at second half, and then Troy Williams came in that final drive. And if they didn't burn a timeout in a challenge that wasn't challengeable, losing the red flag and they might have had a shot to get a little bit closer. And before we move on completely from that, missing the field goal, not going for 1 instead of 2, and missing that's 3 points. You add that, that's 4 points. The field goal and the missed extra point. If you take that 1 point, now it's 22-20. 22-19. Now you're a field goal. And if you don't burn the challenge, now you might be in field goal range. So they got to figure out the special teams just a little bit and it's just executing. And I believe they'll get better as time goes on. And I look forward to celebrating a W this weekend. So that's the end of Hammer Time for week 2, or heading into week 2. Remember, new episodes are 5 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday nights. Team Wednesdays on the USFL Network. Go to the YouTube channel. Subscribe. If you subscribe, you automatically enter into the Cavante Turpin autographed jersey. It's licensed. It's beautiful. It's a Dallas Cowboys jersey. And, the USFL legend MVP, the first ever MVP of the USFL. There's the new league. It's Cavante Turpin. So definitely subscribe. You get all the shows. We got Tell Me About It, which is fantastic because it's everything real quick at you. Then you got Team Wednesdays, where each team, we go into it a little bit more. Obviously, this is the Maulers show. You got USFL Authority, the best opinion show on the planet when it comes to the USFL. And we got Talking with Hype now. He's interviewing players. There's only one home for the USFL if you want all coverage that isn't owned by Fox. The USFL Network is definitely it. So subscribe and spend every Wednesday dinner time with Webb. Hammer up, hammer down, hammer out. It's Hammer Time.